Hey, welcome to Defense Diaries. I'm your host, Bob Murdaugh, and welcome to 5 Days of Glory. This is the 5th day, I believe, of the Robert Tellis trial. The state has rested. They are done. Now, we didn't see at the end of the day yesterday whether or not they filed their motion, the defense motion for a directed verdict. I'm assuming that either happened because they cut off the stream right away. So it wasn't that we missed it and I just didn't stream it. We didn't have the opportunity to watch it. So I don't know if that was done. If it wasn't done then, it will certainly be done first thing this morning, or maybe it'll be done before they start streaming it. I don't know. And also, at some point, the judge will admonish the defendant in terms of whether or not he's going to testify, just kind of explaining his constitutional right to do so. And those are just two things that we don't know if it's going to happen. So Dizzy this morning sent me the witness list for the defense. Wasn't overly lengthy. Had a lot of law enforcement, which tracks because it appears that, you know, with this whole thing with this theory, this frame-up theory of theirs, you know, they're going to have to put cops on. I don't know if they think that they're going to get cops to admit that they planted evidence and things like that, but seems like a long shot to me. But, you know, maybe Tellis is going to get up there and just spit it. You know, it's like, I can't remember if I put it in the description of this live or if I tweeted it or what have you. But to me, it's got that like a Murdaugh vibe where I can just imagine that this Tellis is like, oh, listen, I'm going to tell the story. Only I can tell the story. I'm going to get up there and I'm going to tell the story the way that I tell it, and the jury's going to buy it. That's it. That's how this shit's going to go down. So, and ultimately it's his choice. It's his choice, which the concept to me, and I've been thinking about this quite a bit, is essentially that, like I get the first part of the frame up, like concept. It appears to me that the concept is that he had a bunch of people pissing him, Tellis, for various reasons, whether it's this bribery thing going on, whether it's people losing huge amounts of money because of decisions he made as the, you know, public adjuster or public administrator, whatever he is, you know, but that there were decisions that were made by him while in office that impacted people's lives financially, substantially. All right. And that out of all those people, that he pissed one of them off so much that they decided to take their revenge on him by killing Jeff Garman. Now, Jeff Garman, if you're new to the case, if you don't know anything about it, is rest in peace, Mr. Garman, was an investigative reporter for a paper out in Vegas. I forget what it's called, the Journal, something Journal. And, you know, Jeff was all up his ass. He was in his business. He was finding out the deets. He was digging. He had a bunch of women coming from the office saying, look, this guy is the worst. He's doing this. He's doing that. He's doing this. He's doing that. And on top of it all, he's sleeping with a woman in the office. So Garman's all about it. He's like, that's what I do. He's like, I sniff out these kind of stories. So he does. He digs in, starts writing some articles. So it becomes evident, and obviously that's very public. Like everybody knows, you know, like Tellis ends up losing the election. Now, whether that was directly related to these articles, they couldn't have helped. Right? I mean, they couldn't have helped him in his campaign. You know, especially when the stuff starts getting really ugly. You know, I mean, that's not going to be a good look for you when you're running for office. So, you know, he ends up losing the election. He's steaming. And, you know, so that essentially is the state's theory that, look, like this, in Tellis's mind, Jeff Garman ruined this guy's life, ruined his career, ruined his life. And that's his motive. He went to exact revenge on Gurman. So going back to Tellis's theory, which is that, he's pissed somebody off. That person now, in a very public way, understands that this Gurman has ruined Tellis's life, at least in Tellis's mind. And he did lose the election. Everyone's aware of that. And that in order for that person to get back at Tellis, what he's going to do is he's going to frame him up for a murder. He's going to put his ass in prison for the rest of his life. So this guy goes out, or gal, I suppose. Women don't typically seem to do like crazy shit like this. Like women tend to stick with their spouses that wrong them. That seems like who they typically kill. So this guy goes out. He's like, this is gonna be perfect. He's like, I'm gonna disguise myself up. I'm like, clearly Tellis has a motive to kill this guy, and clearly law enforcement's going to blame him. So I'm gonna go out all garbed up, wear this big sombrero. I'm gonna get a whip that's close to the whip that his wife drives. It's perfect. I'm gonna do it. So boom, bada bing, bada boom. Goes over there. The horrible occurrence happens. And that's where I get lost. Like where I get lost from that point. So I understand the concept up until then. So when does law enforcement get the heads up to, all right, so I've done this. Now I need one of y'all to plant some DNA under Gurman's fingernails. I need y'all to cut up a hat that look just like the hat that I was wearing. Like that's a part of it I get lost on. Like that's the part that I'm dying to hear Tellis tell us. See what I did there? So like I'm anticipating he's going to testify today. I talked to my homie Josh Ritter. He's in court this morning, so hopefully he gets done before he comes on, because I think Josh will probably jump on with us. Like I had a big plan today. I had a big plan today. I was going to come in character. I was going to play my twin brother, Jimmy, who's very different, identical twin, looks exactly like me, but is a very different person. And Allie kind of poo-pooed it. She said, that sounds lame. And I'm like, what? Like, would have been amazing. So I chickened out from coming in character, doing my Jimmy character, which you guys would have loved. I know that you would have loved it. Because it would have been hilarious. It would have been really funny. But, is it appropriate? We're talking about somebody who lost his life here. So, I don't know. Like, it's just ultimately I did listen to Allie. But she's wrong. She's wrong. She's sometimes wrong about things that are funny. My wife is brilliant in many, many ways. Sometimes I wonder about her hilarity level. So I don't know. It would have been fun, and I want to do it someday. It'll be hilarious. But maybe I'll do it like when I'm not doing like a murder trial. That seems like that would be inappropriate. But so that's where I'm at, y'all. And good morning, beautiful humans. Oh, actually, it's 12:30. So good afternoon, beautiful humans. Thank you so much for joining me. And of course, all my beautiful mods. Thank you guys. Thank you a million times over. Doing double duty tonight. As you guys know, I hope you're going to join us tonight. Such a big story. Like, I go through the YouTubes. Like, everybody's doing the same shit. Like, how much about the same shit can you watch? Dig into a new story. Like, to me, I don't know of a more disturbing story than this story of corruption and abuse of power by this cop. I mean, to essentially destroy the lives of 50 plus people. And remember, all of these people that he framed up, like legit framed up, 41 have been fully exonerated as actually factually innocent. And that should blow your mind, because it's not just about that person that's spending 10, 20, 25, 30 years. 2 of them died in prison. It's not just about them. It's about their lives. It's about their families, their friends, everybody that they touch. Everything is affected by that kind of monstrous behavior by a cop who we trust. We give them those guns and badges, and they're sworn to serve and protect us. And it's the ultimate betrayal. It's for you guys that haven't looked, it's a cop named Ronaldo Guevara. Dirtbag is probably an understatement. He's much worse than that. He's an absolute monster. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, he killed the lives of 51 people by putting them in prison on bullshit, on lies, on made up testimony, on fudged police reports. Like your life is over if you spend 25 years in prison. We're talking about the most important formative years in terms of adulthood are all gone, wiped away, never to be given back. There's no way to repair it. So, I hope so. Margaret Byrne, who is a brilliant documentary filmmaker, will be joining Bill and I. Bill allegedly got a new computer, and I'm keeping an eye on it, guys. I'll pull it up right now so that Diz can get us all set up here. So we don't want to miss 1 second of this scintillating trial. So at any rate, Bill will be joining us tonight, as usual per Tuesday night meetings with Bill. But we're going to be joined by Margaret Byrne. Look her up, and you'll see she's very accomplished, and she's been digging into the Guevara thing for a very, very long time. Like, this has been like the name of the documentary is called Fighting Time. It is not out yet. She is interviewing everybody, and she obviously focuses on Bill because Bill was the whistleblower. Bill Dorsch, my friend, our friend of the show, my partner in finding additional Gacy victims, boots on the ground. Like the dude's the truth. Like, Bill Dorsch is heroic. Like, he really is. It's like Bill Dorsch is what we want every cop to be. He really is. He's just a true blue guy who cares about victims. 41 have been exonerated, and Chicago is paying out between 10 and 20 million to each of them. So, as you can imagine, Chicago's not happy about it. So that's tonight, 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. I hope that you guys all come in. Some new content. It's different. It's different than anything out on the interwebs. I had this frog in my throat in the beginning yesterday too. So I hope you guys can join. I have portaled you there. I'm not sure if you guys will sit there. I mean, these days run pretty long because it's a West Coast trial. So, I mean, like, Jay pivoting out of this thing was a power move because, Jay'd be sitting there having a live stream till 8:00 at night on this trial, which is nightmare world. Maybe 7:30, but either way, it's, for me, it's going till like 6:37. So, it makes for long days. Again, today, I do want to kind of go through. I'm not going to throw it up on here because it was kind of hard for me to read. So good. So I just got a text from Margaret. She's going to be playing a clip from the doc. So that's like, I didn't want to promote it, but like her talking to these guys that have been exonerated, if it doesn't touch the cockles of your heart, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, it's like incredibly powerful stuff. So I'm really excited about it. Bill's really excited about it. And I think that you guys will find it to be an unbelievable story, incredibly sad. with, some justice at the end. If we want to call it justice, it's much like these trials that we watch where, somebody's lost their lives or multiple people have lost their lives. And we consider punishing the person that committed the atrocities to be some form of justice. It obviously does nothing to help really soothe the pain that is lifelong for the victims' families. But it's something. At least it's something. It's holding somebody responsible for their actions, and it's for all intents and purposes ending their life. So it's the best we can do. We have not figured out a way to bring people back. So it's going to be something else. So I hope you guys will join us for sure. And I'll remind you again at the end. So let me read through. Let's try to pick through who we think might well be testifying today. All right. Okay, so a lot of them are generic. So they got the Communication Bureau. So like when you're giving notice of witnesses, and if it's like a foundational witness, like you don't necessarily have to name an individual person. Like you can name a custodian records. So they've got somebody potentially coming from the Communication Bureau, custodian records from Las Vegas Metro PD, another custodian of records from the University Medical Center. This is their witness list. And remember, they do not have to call all the people on their witness list at all. Like it's kind of a famous story with my dad and Sam on the Gacy case that they were literally going through the phone book, like just picking random names in there just to kind of give so they can turn over a huge, because you have no obligation to call anybody on your witness list, but you don't necessarily want the state, and the state does the same shit. They'll list way more people than they intend on calling, like kind of obfuscating like who they're going to call, what they're going to like, but we do have to give an idea of what they're supposed to testify about. Like, so there's that part of it. So, Richard Frankie, Franky. He sounds like I don't know what he is. He's an LPI. If you guys could tell me what that is. Licensed private investigator is what I'm going to guess that is. Maria J. Romero, who is with the Las Vegas Fire Department. Daniel A. Shaw, another dude from the fire department. Tracy Torres, and she is from the Draskovich Law Group, which I think is his lawyer's law firm. And then we've got Alicia Goodwin from the Clark County Public Administrator's Office. So that is obviously his former office that he held. Oh, Detective Tolliver. We all remember her. She was on the stand for way too short of a period of time for my liking. Lieutenant Jay Roybal, Detective Hawkins, Tracy Torres is listed again. Kimberly McMahon, another. So both of those appear to be from the law firm. Christina Ramos, and she's from the Clark County Human Resources Department. This watermark is kind of making it hard for me. Jennifer Sharn, former Clark County HR analyst, a custodian of records for the Las Vegas Review-Journal, custodian of records for the Clark County Detention Center, custodian of records for the Las Vegas Metro Police Department again. And then they once again put down another custodian from Las Vegas PD. All right. So, and let me think. Like she sent me one other thing. Let me just check. So I think that's the bulk. And just so you know, you do not have to name the defendant on your witness list. Okay. All right. So I think that's it. So that to me tells me that we're going to see Tellis testify today. Because a lot of those do not sound like lengthy witnesses. I think he's going to be trying to make a couple points, various people, and that'll probably be it. I would not be shocked if defense's case in chief is done today. That's just based on my experience of doing some lawyering. I think that might be a one-dayer right there. Depending, I mean, if they get somebody up there, they're really trying to get into the weeds with, I suppose that could be lengthy. So, J-Bo, I see you in here. I love you. I miss you. How did it go with the stream this morning? I wanted to jump on, but I was trying to get some work done. But I saw you, and I was sending you love from afar, and it looked like you had a nice crowd in there, so that's good. That's good. Support our boy. Support our boy. I still am holding out hope. Oh, now Allie's saying, "Where's Jimmy? Where's Jimmy?" You don't get Jimmy. Like, she destroyed the dreams. She said the exact words were, "I think it will be lame." So much. Like, I was practicing in the shower. I was amazing in the shower, y'all. That's all I want you to know. I was amazing in the shower. So yeah, but we'll get to it. We'll get to it. The other thing I was thinking, do I use one of the puppets? Do I use the Gacy puppet and instead making it
being washed?
Got noise.
We addressed yesterday in Detective Gaddis's testimony. He was concerned about the anonymous tips, the number of people in reference to the anonymous tips, certain conclusions that Detective Gaddis arrived in, establishing her probable cause.
Sounds like maybe it's
basically
true, Jacqueline.
Testifying to the same thing has been previously addressed before the court in our renewed motion.
Everybody is fantastic.
Being retained concerning the Franks v. Delaware motion.
Okay, and I do recall reading that report. You're not going to call him first, right?
No.
I mean, so at lunch I can review his report again.
Thank you. Yes.
And then make a determination. So I'm assuming the state's making a motion to not allow.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to be able to review that report again.
Understood. We have noticed him up.
I don't know.
As an expert witness, we have him available. And obviously, we do this prior to the trial starting to see where the evidence is, the state of the evidence that's been presented by the state. He is available to testify. I've explained the concerns that the state has, and perhaps Your Honor would have with his proposed testimony, and we anticipate Your Honor wanting a proffer, but I provided ahead of time his opinion by way of proffer, so the court knows the sum and substance of his testimony.
Yes, Jay, I would love you to drop Sloan off and jump on. So yes, please.
Okay. And so you won't call him before the lunch hour.
We will not.
Okay.
Sure. Okay. Your Honor, so we were yesterday after court, we were provided with a series of proposed exhibits. The state has some concerns as to the admissibility as to a number of them. So our thought was maybe if we could address maybe some of the issues regarding admissibility now. What I didn't want to do is potentially interrupt witnesses with objections on this. And certainly if we had had these a little earlier, we could have at least maybe brought these concerns up.
Who's your first witness?
It would be Dr. Mark Chambers. And what we would propose to the court, because this case has been moving forward so efficiently, a number of people are going to be available at the end of the week. We've been reaching out, trying to get people to move their schedules to be available today. There's been some difficulties in reference to that. What we anticipate doing is calling Dr. Mark Chambers this morning and then having a break so we could address these issues that should be addressed out of the presence of the jury to avoid an interrupted presentation of the defense's case.
Okay, so you're only going to have one witness today?
Correct. As of right now, we're waiting for another witness. She had called Crime Stoppers. She was available tomorrow. We're trying to move her up till this morning. We called the hallway. She is not present yet. Again, everybody was subpoenaed to testify towards the end of the week. So we're trying to accommodate the real-time schedule of this trial.
Okay, so we could let the jury go, but we could deal with some of these exhibits.
Correct.
Certainly.
All right, but we don't have to do it before Dr. Chambers
No, we
comes
could
in.
put Dr. Chambers on.
Okay,
Judge, can I have the evidence proposed so I can make a record of what is being objected to?
right, before, I mean, we could probably do that,
Yeah,
right?
the other thing is, I believe the defense will stipulate to the admission of 312 and then 316 to 336.
That is correct. And obviously, the purpose of stipulations is to make the trial process smoother and a better presentation of evidence to the jury. And obviously, we anticipate participation in the same way from the state concerning our exhibits. But yes, we stipulate the admission of those exhibits. I'm going to approach your clerk with our defense exhibits,
Okay,
additional defense exhibits. I believe we're on 2.
All right. So first of all, I was dead wrong. This case is not going to be done today. So in Leslie, just like lawyers do the best that they can, like leading into a trial to try to kind of guesstimate how long they think that a trial will run. You know, I mean, it's really, really hard to do. And, you know, we do that for the benefit of the jurors because we want them to know on the long end how long we're ripping them away from their normal lives. But ultimately, and I was saying it, there were very few sidebars, there were very few objections. We didn't have any kind of motions in limine come up, like all the typical shit that we see in trials that Jay and I have so many sound bites for and sound effects. Like we just didn't see them. Like this thing was plugging along. I was complimenting the state multiple times about how quickly and efficiently they were putting their case in chief on. So when you're trying to get people that are potentially traveling from out of state on subpoena, like you're going to do the best you can. You have to try to work around people's schedules when you're having them come in to testify, you know, in a case. It's like, like if they've got things going on or they're saying, I can't do it, then, I mean, you can't like force them in. I mean, you can subpoena them, and if they ignore the subpoena, you could drag them in, but you know, you're not trying to piss your witnesses off, you know, by like hauling them into court under, you know, the subpoena. So you do the best that you can. And it sounds like that he probably anticipated, he being defense counsel for Tellers, was anticipating that this trial would probably go to midweek in terms of the state's case in chief. So he was telling everybody, all right, I'm thinking Thursday, Friday, maybe Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So they'll do the best that they can to try to get the people in. No, like I live for snark, Leslie. So never, ever put your snark in check. Big snark fan over here. So, but I just wanted to explain, you know, like I'm sure the judge isn't thrilled. You know, I'm sure she's sitting up there like, so you only have one witness today. You know, she didn't sound overly thrilled. But, you know, if they can handle some stuff like housekeeping, and if there's issues with some of the things that they're trying to introduce, they can deal all that or deal with all that during the course of what otherwise would have been testimony. So it sounds like we're going to get this Dr. Chambers, who I didn't read it on the list. Like, so I don't know where this person's from, unless there was more of a witness list and we only got a couple of pages of it. So I don't know, but let's take the surprise out of it and find out.
so these are the ones the clerk's gonna mark.
Correct.
Okay,
Okay,
perfect.
so we can make it.
How's the court sound, kids? Good?
Yes, we're on X right now.
And the only other thing, Your Honor, is remember how I talked about having a flash drive of the long form of all the video?
Right.
The defense raised a couple concerns. I'm just deleting the images they don't want on there to go back to the jury. I want them to check my work to make sure I remove what they wanted, and then we'll be offering that.
Okay. All right, can we bring the panel in?
Thank you. As far as the state's concerned, yeah.
All right, we can bring the panel in.
Oh, Nancy Grace with good hair. The judge was really fixing her butter there, getting that coif right. Indeed, Jay. Indeed. The anticipation is that, yes, he's going to be testifying. I mean, he can always change his mind last second, but the word on the street is he's testifying. Not today, it sounds like. They're putting on a Dr. Chambers. Safe. Day 5 or 6. I hope it's day 5. I think it's day 5. It's all a blur. It's all a blur. I think it's day.
Thanks, everyone. Please be seated.
Does the state stipulate to the presence of the panel?
Yes, Your Honor.
And the defense?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, Mr. Drossowitz, you may call your first
Yes,
witness.
the defense calls Dr. Mark Chambers.
Yeah, we saw him yesterday, Jay. Matt Johnson just chilling back there. I don't know. That's an interesting question. Sometimes we see him go first. Like, I think in Benefield, they put her on first, maybe second.
You do
It was at
solemnly
the
swear
beginning.
the testimony you're about to give in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You may be seated.
Thank you.
Please state and spell your first and last name for the record.
Mark Chambers, MARKCHAMBERS.
Thank you. Dr. Chambers, if you could begin by telling us a little bit about yourself, beginning with your education.
All right. I attended undergraduate studies at Stanford University, where I graduated with a major in psychology and a minor in biology. I graduated with distinction, which meant that I was in the top 10% of my class. I also was admitted to Phi Beta Kappa during that time. I also earned a master's degree at Stanford in education. My doctoral studies were conducted at Northwestern University, where I earned a degree in clinical psychology.
How are you currently employed?
I am self-employed with a practice in clinical and forensic psychology.
If you could please explain to us the difference between clinical psychology versus forensic psychology.
Clinical psychology is probably what most people think about when they think about psychology or psychologists. A clinical psychologist deals with problems in the human condition, mental disorders, or other kinds of personal problems people may have in their lives, like depression or anxiety. They do psychological testing to help better understand a person's issues or problems or situation. And then they provide treatment services, which we usually refer to as psychotherapy or counseling.
If you could explain to us too a little more in detail what is psychology. I think we all have a pretty general idea, but if we could just address that this morning.
Psychology is the science of behavior. And although most people might think of it as relating to thought processes or something that goes on inside the brain, that's not something that we can access directly with any kind of psychological or scientific methods. So we have to look at people's behavior, and then from that, we sometimes infer things about the way that the human brain works or why people behave the way they do. But ultimately, we are looking at behavior and then drawing conclusions from that.
In reference to forensic psychology, which you have been qualified in previous hearings to give expert testimony concerning, is it fair to say that psychology is basically taking well-accepted principles, scientific principles concerning human behavior and applying it to specific circumstances?
Yes, and those specific circumstances are related to some sort of court issue. So a forensic psychologist may do work in family court, conducting evaluations or child custody assessments. They may work in criminal courts like this one here to provide expert testimony that might help the trier of fact, either the judge or the jury, to understand a particular issue that's germane to the case. Sometimes we also work in lawsuits and provide testimony about maybe in a car accident, what kind of psychological trauma an individual has sustained. But ultimately, as you said, forensic psychology is the application of basic psychological principles and research to the issue at hand in the court-related proceeding. And as a result of that, a forensic psychologist sometimes has to be a little bit of a jack of all trades, because there are a lot of different areas of psychology that can apply to a court-related setting. And so we have to know a little bit about a lot of different things.
Okay, would you kind of, I guess, analogize that to that of a coroner? I mean, a coroner is called upon to give an opinion concerning manner of death.
Certainly, yes. A coroner has to know about head injuries and gunshot wounds and blunt force trauma and poisoning and all different ways of death that somebody might experience. So they can't be an expert in any one of those areas. They kind of have to know all of those things so that when they perform an autopsy, they can bring that knowledge to bear to determine the cause of death.
So we have scientific principles applied to specific fact scenarios that help judges, juries make certain determinations concerning issues of fact. Fair to say?
That's fair to say, yes.
You've given and been qualified to give testimony concerning eyewitness identification. If you could, and other matters, if you could please explain to us other areas in which you have been qualified and given expert testimony concerning.
Sure. One of the big things that I often testify about has to do with the reliability of memory, because a lot of court proceedings rely on the testimony of witnesses, and by virtue of that, the reliability of their memory as to what they observed or experienced, or what kind of testimony they're bringing to the court. So there's a lot of research on how memory works, the way in which it can be defective, and that can be helpful to the trier of fact to judge the credibility or reliability of a particular witness's testimony, rather than just assuming that whatever they say is automatically true. I've also testified about the effects of various medications or substances on behavior, including drugs and alcohol, because those things can distort the way people behave, the way that they think, the way that they react to certain situations. And so that can be helpful to know. Stressful situations, trauma can also affect a person's behavior and reactions to certain situations. And so it can be helpful for a trier of fact to know more about that before making a judgment about the case in front of them.
And just so I'm clear then, you've been qualified to give testimony as a forensic psychologist. And as a forensic psychologist, your testimony could address a whole myriad of situations that affect people's behavior and why they do things.
That is correct, yes.
You have been called on in prior cases by defense counsel,
Yes.
myself included.
Correct.
Have you been called upon to give testimony as a forensic psychologist in prosecutions?
I certainly have, yes.
Federal cases, state cases, if you could please explain to us just briefly your involvement in prosecutions.
I've testified and consulted all over the world. I think if I had to add them up, the number of versus defense cases is pretty evenly matched. But I've testified in family court. I've testified in civil court. I've testified in military and federal courts, as I said, in many, many jurisdictions.
And when you're called upon, let's say by a defense team or a defense attorney, you are not retained to give a specific opinion, fair to say?
No, I'm here
Defense
to,
oriented or prosecution oriented, something along those
correct.
lines.
I'm here to elucidate the relevant psychological principles and research and knowledge that will help the trier of fact better understand case. In some cases, it's not favorable to the party that is consulting me. And I have to tell them, I'm sorry, I can't help you because the research says this, and that's probably bad for your case. And that's okay. I mean, sometimes that means a little loss of work, but I've got plenty of work, so that's not really a concern for me.
In reference to these scientific principles upon which you draw opinions or conclusions, you're not a research psychologist.
I am not. I mean, I was trained in research. I have done research, but in my role as a forensic psychologist, my primary skill is understanding research, being able to read research studies that have been published by other researchers, and then gleaning from that the appropriate principles and understanding about human behavior that's relevant to the case.
And these research studies, again, fair to say, cover a wide array of circumstances.
Correct.
Your job is to review the research. And let me ask you this, the research, whether it be concerning false confessions, whether it be concerning memory, it's open to peer review. And if you could explain that to us.
Sure. So the peer review process is a safeguard to make sure that research that is published has done the things that it needs to do to be reliable. So if a research team conducts a study and then they coalesce their findings and then they put together a paper or an article that they'd like to publish, they then submit it to the journal that they would like to publish it. And then that journal sends the draft of the study to a couple of other experts in the field who then look it over, they critique it, they make suggestions of what things could be done better or questions that they feel like they have that the study doesn't answer that need to be answered in the study. And in most cases then the study, if the editor of the journal feels like it still has merit despite the criticisms, it will send it back to the researchers with the suggestions and say, hey, can you make these changes and we'll take another look at it. Sometimes they'll accept it or reject it immediately, but most of the time it's that middle ground where they try to give some guidance to the researchers on how the paper can be better and more suitable for publication. So by the time a study gets published in a scientific journal, in a peer-reviewed scientific journal, it has been looked over by several sets of eyes, not just the researchers who are submitting the paper.
When you're called upon to give expert testimony concerning issues in the case, sometimes you're called upon to give a wide variety of opinions, and sometimes you're called upon to give a very narrowly tailored opinion as to perhaps a single topic.
Yes,
subject.
I think that's fair to say.
And in this case, you were retained to give testimony in the state of Nevada versus Robert Tellis.
Correct.
Did I reach out to you in reference to this case?
No, I believe that I was originally retained on this case by the defense investigator.
Okay, and that was prior to my involvement, to your knowledge, in this matter.
That's my understanding, yes.
You were called upon to review certain evidence in this case to give testimony concerning suicide attempts for those that are involving charges or
Yes.
facing charges.
That's correct.
Let's talk about this. Individuals who may be charged with a crime attempting to commit suicide. How common is it?
Well, first of all, it's hard to say because there's a lot of people that go into custody, but it's not very common. I think it's fair to say that it's probably less than 1 in 1,000 suspects or defendants who are involved in the criminal justice system. So it's not particularly common, but it is more common than it is in the general public. So people who are involved in the criminal justice system do commit suicide or attempt suicide at a higher rate than the general public.
Are there risk factors that have been identified by peer-reviewed scientific research on this issue?
Well, yes. One of the risk factors that has been identified is the severity of the crime, the severity of the charge. So if somebody is accused of a particularly severe charge, then the risk for suicide or an attempted suicide is higher.
Fair to say that the severity of a murder charge is about as serious as it can get.
I would think so.
Is an attempted suicide a reliable indicator of a guilty conscience?
Not necessarily, no.
And is that based upon research?
Yes.
And if you could explain.
So there's our answer. So the answer is they're trying to rebut the consciousness of guilt with respect to how Tellis responded to, SWAT and everybody storming the house to arrest him, wherein he was trying self-harm. So that's what this doctor is going to be testifying to.
This issue.
So there, in 2011, there was a study published of a very comprehensive research project where they looked at over 27,000 suicides that were committed by individuals who were involved in the criminal justice system. And then they compared those individuals to over 500,000 individuals who were also involved in the criminal justice system but did not commit suicide, so that they could identify, well, what makes these people a little bit different than the people who didn't commit suicide. First of all, I think it probably is obvious that individuals who came in with a mental health problem were already at higher risk, because those are the people that typically commit suicide. So it wouldn't necessarily have anything to do with whether they're being charged. But
Welcome.
it's clear from the research that the stress of being
psychologist
accused of a crime.
Yeah, just in case you missed it. So it appears this guy is going to be testifying, coming up with some kind of explanation why Tellis's actions at the time that they were trying to arrest him were in. Sounds like he was trying to kill himself, was not, in fact, consciousness of guilt, but was something else. So that sounds like what he's coming on for. So
interesting.
Should be fascinating. Should be fascinating.
Particularly as
or not.
A severe crime, as I said, can cause people to commit or attempt suicide, whether they're guilty or not. And for the study that I referenced, for instance, found that there were people who had gone through the system, were adjudicated not guilty, and after their case was done, they were still at a higher risk for suicide. Other people who had their cases dropped, but had still been accused of this crime, were at a higher risk for suicide. So it was clear from the study that it's more the process of being involved in the criminal justice system, being accused of a crime, that produces the stress that can result in suicide than guilty conscience itself. And I should add, part of the problem that even addressing that question of guilty conscience is that, remember I said earlier about what psychology is and it isn't. It's about behavior. It's not about mental processes. So to accurately answer that question, we would have to know what's in the brain of the individual. Guilty conscience, by definition, regards what's going on inside, not what the person is doing. And so there are going to be many, many cases where we don't know if the person is guilty or not. So it becomes difficult to answer that question. But we do know that some people, even after they have been found not guilty by the system, just being involved in the system is a suicide risk.
And just so we're clear, you're not called upon to give testimony concerning the guilt or innocence of Mr. Tellis.
No, of course not.
that's obviously within the purview of this jury and not yours.
Absolutely.
So just so I'm clear on your testimony, if a person attempts to commit suicide after being accused of the crime, that doesn't mean that they probably did it.
It's not a reliable indicator, no.
Innocent people or people that have been exonerated of a very serious crime have attempted suicide.
Yes.
You are aware that Mr. Tellis cut his arm.
So just to be clear, this isn't the defense. The defense, as we've been led to believe, is a frame up. All right. So what they're attacking specifically right here is the consciousness of guilt evidence, wherein, if you guys aren't familiar with the case, when they went to go arrest Tellis, he barricaded himself in the house. They had to make entry. He was in the bathtub. He had cut his arms, apparently. So, typically the state's going to say, okay, well, obviously, much like when Donna was trying to jet to Vietnam, and then where was she going after that? Saudi Arabia or something?
No, she was going to, she has to stop off in
Dubai.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, you look at that, like, fleeing is consistently viewed as consciousness of guilt, because if you're not guilty, why are you running, right? That's the concept. Same concept here, at least from the state's perspective. Like, well, if you're not guilty, then, why are you trying to kill yourself? So they're using that. So they're just trying to rebut that one element of the state's case against him. So that's what this dude's doing. I don't think that they'll be getting into anything beyond that with this doctor.
This will be a good test, Bob. I wonder if you'll get hit with a limited ad revenue on this one, because there's that's why a lot of times people will say unaliving themselves. I'm curious if they'll hit you with it. We'll see.
Yeah, they might. They hit me with the first 2 days I got hit, but I thought it could have been because of the rusting dick face. But
did you appeal?
I did appeal. They flipped both of them.
Oh,
back.
Good.
But yeah, you're right. I'll be curious. That's definitely one of their trigger words.
Speaking of Bob, did you see when they call? So Kayla, just a real quick aside, but Kayla Bumpus was the attorney for Little Woody when she kept saying, because she has a YouTube channel, on the stand when she was testifying, rather than saying she kept saying unaliving. It was so funny. I'm like,
really?
You're not on your YouTube channel. Like 5 times during her testimony, she kept saying unaliving. I was like, madam, this is not your YouTube channel. You're in court. You could say the word. It was pretty funny.
No shit. Wow. No, I did not see that. That's hilarious.
It was really funny.
Wow. That's crazy. the merging of all the worlds, Jay.
Yes, worlds colliding.
Man.
Pretty severely in this case.
I am.
Did you have an opportunity to discuss this issue with Mr. Tellis?
I did.
Did he express to you concerns that he had at the time that he did this?
Objection, hearsay.
Was his explanation to you consistent with the studies that you have just referred to?
Objection, hearsay.
It's hearsay.
Again, you have given testimony concerning these studies where a person gets accused, and as a result of the accusation and the process, not necessarily guilt, but the accusation and the process, that person attempted suicide.
Yes.
And that attempted suicide does not necessarily mean a guilty conscience.
Correct.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Wow. So Jay, I don't know if you caught
Good morning, sir.
if you were running Sloan to school, but essentially the student's their only witness they have today.
I saw, yeah. Judge wasn't happy, right?
Yeah. So wow, and he was short. So could be a short day. Short day.
Murray's going to be happy.
Indeed.
Can I have some sort of overview of what you reviewed in preparation for your testimony this morning?
Certainly. I was sent the discovery from the case, which I believe included the police report, which essentially documents the investigative process that the police went through when they were assigned to this case. I think that also included some hospital records for the defendant, when he was hospitalized immediately after his arrest because of the injuries to his
Sure.
arms. I think I saw some photos that were related to the case. And I was also provided with medical records for the defendant during his time in custody at Clark County Detention Center.
Okay. And in terms of the police reports, you mentioned that you had we call it the OR, the officer's report. Is that what you're referring to?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. How about any witness statements? Have you reviewed any of those?
I believe there were witness statements in there as well, yes.
Okay. And then did you review photographs associated with the case?
As I mentioned earlier, yes.
Video?
Don't recall seeing any video.
DNA reports?
I think I saw some DNA reports,
Okay.
yes.
Reports from like phone extractions, anything like that?
I think I saw a log of some phone records, so I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to.
I'm talking more like the contents of a phone.
I don't recall seeing that, but that doesn't mean I didn't.
Okay. And when was it that you were provided these materials?
It was some time ago. I was retained on this case, I believe, late last year, but I couldn't tell you the exact date.
Okay. And it sounds like you interviewed Mr. Tellis at some point.
I did.
When was that?
I actually interviewed him twice. I interviewed him earlier this year, I believe, and then I also interviewed him last Saturday.
Okay. And in either interview, did you record your conversation with him?
I did not.
Did you take notes?
I did.
Are your notes available?
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Well, do you still have your notes?
Yes,
Okay. So if the court ordered you to provide them, you could do that?
I could, yes.
Okay. And you understand, of course, we don't have them yet.
I haven't been asked for them, no.
Okay. And so if we made that request and the court agrees with us, you'd be able to provide it?
Certainly.
Okay. Besides Mr. Tellis, did you interview anyone else?
I did not.
How long were the interviews that you conducted with him?
The first interview was about 3 hours, I believe. And then the more recent one was maybe an hour and a half.
Okay. Did you ever administer any tests to him?
I did not.
So it was just interviews, and so you're sort of relying on his description of events.
Well, I mean, I captured his description of events.
Okay. But what he's telling you is his factual version, right?
I would assume so.
Okay. I mean, you don't ever verify that with anybody else. Is that
I did
fair?
have not.
Okay. And so you're kind of getting information from a single source?
Well, I'm getting information from him for the information that he has available to him.
Okay. And like you could apply, I mean, sometimes there are tests administered in order to do psychological assessments of people.
Correct.
And none of those were done?
No.
On either occasion?
No.
Okay. And you're not here to tell us anything about events that occurred on December the 2nd of 2022, correct?
Well, no.
I mean, you
not on
haven't,
that date. No.
you haven't been to Bronze Circle.
Council, I believe it's September 2nd. There was a question. December 2nd. I think.
Oh, I thought I said
Just a
September. I
mistake. No worries.
apologize. I mean September, if I misspoke.
Yes. No.
I mean, you haven't been to Bronze Circle.
No.
You're not familiar with any of the evidence other than what you read in the officer's report?
Whatever I read in the police report, yes.
Okay. Now you mentioned that, you sometimes testify like about the reliability of memory and that sort of thing. And that is sometimes used in cases where there is eyewitness testimony to be relied upon.
Yes.
And then sometimes I would assume it's to talk about like children who recall instances of sexual abuse that occurred in the past. They're challenging their memories of that.
That's right.
And so you kind of provide, I guess, context to how they might misremember things.
In some cases, yes.
Okay. And I think you said on direct examination that that going through the criminal justice system just in itself is a stressful event,
Yes, certainly.
and that correlates with the severity of the charge.
The risk of suicide correlates with the severity of the charge, yes.
Okay. And what we're saying is, I think you said it doesn't, I think your words were not necessarily when asked if it was like the suicidality was indicative of a guilty conscience, correct?
Yes.
And so not necessarily to me means sometimes it could be.
Sure. Of
Okay.
course.
So there are sometimes people are suicidal because of feeling guilty about the crime they've committed.
I think that's almost certainly true.
Okay. Do you have any kind of information? I don't know if there are studies on that about how often that might be the case.
Well, because as I said earlier, we don't know what's going through a person's mind in most cases unless they tell us.
Right.
People that commit suicide don't usually have much to say.
Right. But if
And
you
so-
attempted it, you
Right.
would.
And even when they tell us, we can't always rely on that as being accurate. So it's a very difficult question to address directly through scientific study.
Because people who have attempted suicide may be unreliable narrators about why they did things, right?
Absolutely.
Mr. Crowley, so this witness is he's a forensic, I think, psychologist or psychiatrist. I can't remember which. He's essentially testifying about the circumstance in which somebody commits suicide when they're being arrested for a crime, that doesn't necessarily equate to consciousness of guilt, that there's various other reasons why people could be suicidal. So they're trying to rebut the whole last portion of the state's case, wherein they were talking about consciousness of guilt, where they were trying to arrest Tellis. He barricaded himself in the home. They made entry. They found him. He was bleeding. He had apparently cut himself, and he was in his bathtub. So they're trying to rebut that, saying that that wasn't related to the fact that he's guilty of the crime, but it relates to something else. So that's what this guy's testifying.
Have they established how much he's getting paid for his testimony?
I didn't hear her ask.
I didn't either.
Question yet.
I bet you it's probably like 10K. When I was in civil cases with forensic psychs at Geico, at least, like I had to go to like the VP to get approval to ever, because if people claimed like from a car accident, because essentially every time it came back positive, every time, because it's just like he said, it's just him talking to this guy. That's all it is. So
it's the hired gun bullshit. That's why that's why I'm always talking about, like, to me, that's why those two dudes, in Reed were so important. You never, whether you're the state, whether you're the plaintiff, whether you're the defendant, it doesn't, like civil, criminal, it doesn't matter. To get independent witnesses that are hired by neither side is like a gift from God, man. It's like you can never pay for that. And if they come down your way, because that alleviates all those questions by the other side. Oh, well, you're a hired gun. And frankly, it should take it out of the jury's minds that, oh, well, this dude's paid by us. So of course he's going to say what they need him to say. Otherwise he wouldn't be on the stand. You know what I mean? Yeah. So to me, like experts almost always cancel each other out, because it's like you just take it for the weight that it's worth, which is they're hired guns for the state too. I mean, even if they're state employees, they're getting paid by the state. So they're not going to come in saying anything that's going to help the defense. You can guarantee yourself that.
And they may be self-interested when they're relaying events to you.
For sure.
And they may be motivated by sort of wanting to avoid criminal responsibility when they're talking to you.
Yes, definitely.
All those factors are always at play when you have someone charged with a crime. Would that be fair?
They can be.
Okay. And do you think there's a correlation of suicidality when people like in high positions in society have what's called like a fall from grace? Do you know what I mean? Being publicly embarrassed?
Yes. I think that that's probably a factor, because when I talk about the stress of being accused of a crime, whether or not you did it, there are a lot of factors that play into that. There's family, there's friends, there's finances, there's your employment, but also, as you said, if it's somebody who has a prominent position in society, just the public scrutiny of being accused, whether you're guilty or not, is sometimes inescapable. And we see cases of that all the time where people are accused of a crime, they're tried, they're found not guilty, but that scrutiny, that public scrutiny continues. Not everybody accepts a not guilty verdict, and so it can be very difficult to function in society afterwards.
That's
But
true.
that public
That's true.
scrutiny would still exist and the embarrassment would still exist if you were guilty too, right?
Right.
And if, say, you were the subject of really negative articles that were published countywide, that would be a stressor that someone might experience as well, right?
Correct.
Being accused of inappropriate behavior in the workplace would be a stressor for somebody, right?
I would think so.
Being accused of being a bad manager would be stressful for somebody, right?
Almost certainly.
Okay. And sort of being accused of being kind of incompetent at your job would be a stressor if that was something that was like published to, say, the county.
Casper,
Yes.
the
Okay.
incompetent
And those
ghost.
types of things cause stress on individuals that may or may not manifest as suicide, but they're troubling to individuals to experience. Is that fair?
Sure, some more than others. It's all about personality and experience, but yes, I would think generally that's true.
And when you say some more than others, if they're someone who puts a lot of importance on their role in a particular office or status, it would be more upsetting for that type of person to have maybe negative articles written about them.
I would think so, yes.
Okay. Could I have the court's indulgence? Thank you.
Yes, just some follow-up. Based upon your testimony and your opinion, there's not really this correlation concerning more evidence against someone for a serious crime than results in a higher likelihood of suicide.
I'm sorry, could you rephrase that?
Absolutely. So there was questions that you were asked concerning evidence in a particular case.
Mhm.
And are you able to say there's any correlation between, let's say, the more evidence of a person having committed a crime, that being correlated to the higher likelihood of suicide?
I think it's probably more accurate to say that it comes down to the individual's perception of his situation. So, for instance, if someone believes that they're in big trouble, that the cops have them dead to rights, whether or not they're guilty, that probably produces more stress than somebody who thinks, yeah, I can get out of this, or I'm good, or they don't have anything on me. So the objective status of that person's situation is probably less important than the subjective perception of the situation that they're in.
So again, that underscores, obviously you agree that human beings, we can be fairly complex and our behavior can be fairly complex.
That's pretty obvious, yeah.
It is. And oftentimes people think, well, if this person committed suicide, if he committed suicide, he must have committed the crime. You're here to dispel that common view.
Yes.
And there's actually scientific data that does so.
Right.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Any Kraus?
Nothing else, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Hawks.
Wow. That could be the only witness.
And I heard you talking before. You think it's because the state went so fast, the defense was just not prepared to go forward?
Yeah, I mean, they did too. It's like I kept saying it during the trial. Like the state was super efficient. Like, no bullshit, no like super dragged out directs. It was like boom, 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 boom. And that was
question from the jurors.
Has anyone in your experience ever attempted suicide in an attempt to gain sympathy from being accused?
I think that's almost certainly true, yes.
Wow.
Especially when the suicide attempt is not successful. Sometimes people do what we call suicidal gestures, which just refers to the fact that it kind of looks like a suicide attempt, but it wasn't fatal. And in many cases,
a
people
very
do
good
that
question.
just to garner
Yeah.
sympathy or to deflect attention from some other issue that they're concerned about.
Alex Murdaugh, anyone?
Yeah, exactly.
I do, thank you. And in reference to this, and we're not saying that's necessarily the case in this case, are we?
No, I'm not at all.
And this perhaps deflection, this perhaps attempting to get sympathy doesn't necessarily equate to knowledge of guilt or guilt.
No, it definitely does not.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Ms. Weber, anything else?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Okay. Dr. Chambers, thank you very much for your testimony here today. You step down.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You are
Prosecution's
excused,
gotta
Ms.
love that
Thank you
question.
very much for being
That's a
here.
great question.
Yeah.
Better question than
Also,
anything the
that's
state
something
asked.
that-
You know, I mean, because like, I don't know if you saw it yesterday, Jay. I mean, they pretty much went very thoroughly through his injuries yesterday, and I didn't really see shit. What was like allegedly when they got him out, they took him out on a gurney, stuck him in an ambulance when they took him from his house. What were his injuries? Like what was the attempt? I didn't see any wounds. Maybe I missed
Nothing
it.
on his arms.
Didn't see anything on his arms. The only wound I saw on this guy was that fingertip.
That's really interesting.
That's interesting.
Our next witness is not here, and as I explained to the court, we had them set for later in the week. We'd anticipate our next witness being available after the lunch break, Your Honor.
Oh, they got
Okay,
another
this
one.
afternoon.
Correct.
Okay. So at this time, we are going to break for lunch. During this recess, you're marched on to discuss or communicate with anyone, including your fellow jurors, in any way regarding the case or experience, either by voice, phone, email, text, internet, or other means of communication or social media. Read, watch, or listen to any news or media accounts or commentary about the case. Do research, consult dictionaries, internet, or reference materials. Do any investigation, test a theory, recreate any aspect of the case, or in any other way investigate or learn about the case on your own, or form express any opinion regarding the case till it's finally submitted to you by 1 o'clock.
Could we start at 1:30, given the other issues that we're
Sure.
going to address?
Okay, so we'll be in recess till 1:30. Thank you very much.
All right, so there's that. What time she say they're coming back?
1:30. So 1:30 their time.
1:30 their time. So that is 3:30 our time. That's 4:30 your time. I imagine you'll be dipping. So yeah, obviously, I'll start a new thread because we're clearly not going to sit here and try to kill 2 hours of time. That sounds like a nightmare scenario for not just Jay and I, but for y'all as well. Legal Mama, this is a good question. Defense Diaries, doesn't the state sometimes do a quick end on their case to make the defense dive into the case unprepared? The judge shouldn't give a bunch of leeway. I've never seen that, to be honest with you, in trials. You know, it's like I was saying, and I don't know if you were here early, Legal. I mean, we do the best that we can as the attorneys to try to give a rough estimate of what we believe the length of our case in chief will be. And it's really not about the lawyers. It's really about the judge being able to give notice to the jurors. Like, look, you know, this is a situation where we've got, the state saying they're going to take 2 weeks, and we've got the defense saying they're going to take a week. So I'm going to say this is potentially going to be a 3-week trial, and then you just can't anticipate how the actual litigation is going to go. You don't know if there's going to be a million objections, if there's going to be a million sidebars, if they're going to litigate every single little issue that pops up during the course of a trial. That's what makes trials last forever. Or if you get overly verbose lawyers that just don't trim down their directs and cross-examinations and ask a bunch of questions that are not really pertinent, which we see all the time. We see it all the time. So like in a situation like that, like I was saying, like if we have witnesses, especially in a case where we have experts, like typically if I can, I will try to find an expert in state. But oftentimes if it's somebody that we're trying to get to testify, that's not like a real huge area of expertise in terms of a certain uh, like whatever it may be, psychiatrist, psychologist, DNA, any specific area of like the evidence that we want to try to attack, especially with like phone forensics. Like we had to, I think in like a couple of our cases, we had to like pull people from like the Carolinas, like experts. We just couldn't find anybody in Illinois. So what that means is you've got to travel, or get them to travel. You got to put them up in a hotel. So, you're trying to minimize your costs. You typically have a pretty finite number in terms of, what you can afford to pay in terms of experts and lodging and food and all that shit. Because every expert expects, food and lodging, and like that's part of, what they charge on top of what they charge hourly to be in court. So, you're trying to avoid, if you can, having them spend the night, especially, because that's your client's money or your client's family money, whoever came up with the money. And you're saying, okay, well, we've got this amount for experts. We've got 6 experts we need to call, like this is what they're asking for a retainer. This is how, you know what I mean? So there's a lot of logistics that you're trying to work out. So we do the best that we can. It's like another advantage that the state typically has. I mean, they're not having to fork out money to get experts typically. Now, that's not to say that if the state needs to hire an expert because they don't have somebody kind of within their umbrella, that's a government employee that they could pull in, that they will have to pony up the money. But then again, you've got the state's coffers, or the county's coffers. It's like not an individual that needs to come up with the money. So, like, I mean, you do the best that they can. Like, and I've never seen a situation where the state has, in order to try to screw the defense over by finishing their case in chief, hoping to catch them with their pants down, hoping that they aren't going to be able to call witnesses, because most judges will, try to accommodate, and whatever the state says, the judge will use against them if they finish their case early. Like if they made a representation, well, we thought we were going to go 2 weeks. Well, you went 4 days, you went 5 days. So you can't really blame the defense for telling their witnesses to plan their travels for the end of the week. So typically the judges will try to do the best that they can to accommodate, like the people that pay the price are the jurors, they're the ones who are stuck, but like these jurors probably aren't thrilled about a 2-hour lunch, and they're not going to be thrilled that there's only one witness called. But I mean, what are they going to do? It's not like you can quit. I'm out of here. Fuck this. This is bullshit. So, but I mean, the real question is, will jurors punish defendants for that kind of stuff? Like if they consider the dragging on to be that, the defense's fault, are they going to even subconsciously kind of take that out on the defendant? Maybe. I don't know. You never know. The psychology of jurists it's a fascinating area that I don't think that a lot of people have really kind of dove into, but it's pretty interesting stuff. So, all right, Jay, yap for a minute while I set up a new StreamYard, would you?
Well, yeah. Well, folks, while he sets us up, don't forget if about Bob's live tonight. You're not going to want to miss that. And I was thinking when Bob was talking about the live he's doing about this guy, this one of the worst cop maybe ever, who's putting all these people into jail. I was thinking about Bob's philosophy when we talk about the death penalty, and Bob always says it's much worse to, in his estimation, to be stuck in a box than like the death penalty. Like that's why Bob always talks about. And I'm thinking, this fucking guy, this cop, put these people, like, he took away their lives. Like it's like Bob was saying before. It's it almost doesn't have the pull maybe that like a serial killer story has, but it's not much different. I mean, obviously, it's different, but and to Bob's point before, he took away their lives, their spouses, their kids, all the people around them, and it's fascinating. And he's gonna have this person does the documentary. I think it's gonna be a really interesting stream. So you don't want to miss that tonight. Do you have this portal go into that so they know, so they can?
Yeah, I'm gonna send that to that, and then from that, because I'm gonna go like an hour. Like I promised both, especially Margaret, that we do an hour. So I'm gonna portal. Hopefully Steve's still going with his Tuesday night Spectre. So I think what I'll end up doing from there is portaling everybody to Steve. So because that'll I'm going to try to stay on
What time is yours?
9 my time. So Steve might already be done. I don't know. I'm not sure.
I think Steve usually does 2 hours on Tuesdays.
He does, but I don't know if he starts, if he goes, because he's Eastern, if he starts at 7. I think
no, he starts at 8 Eastern. You're going to be starting at the same time, so I think he'll still be going.
Oh, good. All
I could be wrong, but make sure you guys are subscribed to Publicly Buzz if you're not already.
Yeah. Wait, if he starts at 8, I'm going at 9
Eastern or
no,
right.
9 Central.
Yeah.
So isn't that 10 o'clock your time?
Oh yeah, so he'll already might be done. So he's before you. So so the schedule will be this, then the afternoon, and then Publicly Buzz, then you. So yeah, that 10 Eastern.
Yeah. All right, cool. All right. I only have one more line here.
If you guys haven't hit that like, please hit the like, share it out if you can. We always appreciate that. We appreciate all you guys, and also the mods we appreciate. Thank you guys for all you do. Doesn't look like if you came in late, it does not appear Tellus will test. Right, he's not testifying today.
No,
I would think, but do you think it's gonna be tomorrow? I guess we can't speculate.
It's hard to know because what he was saying was that what time she say she's coming back, Jay? 3:30?
4:30 your well, yes, 3:30 your time. 3:30 your time.
3:30. Okay, all right.
Charlotte always busts my chops because over in the UK they got the 24-hour. It's like military time, and meanwhile over here we could never figure it out. I could never figure it out.
I screw it up all the time.
Me too.
And I'm pretty good with it. But Allie, for as long as she's lived in Chicago, still always asks me. She's like, "Wait, is the East Coast like an hour ahead of us?" I'm like, "Yeah." She just that's something that just does not function with her brain. All right, so cool. I'm gonna do the portal, y'all, and send you guys back to the afternoon stream. It should be a shorty. Are you going live tomorrow?
Yeah, I think tomorrow. Tomorrow night tomorrow morning I'll probably do another rewatch, and then tomorrow night I'm gonna do a little bit more of the police report. For folks who watched it, I hope you enjoyed the little information. Bob, basically what I was teasing yesterday is that basically it was 3 inmates who essentially confirmed that something that Wendy Adelson's ex, Jeff Lacoste, said about her saying how much I'll do it real quickly. Jeff Lacoste says, at some point, Wendy took me by to the side and said very seriously, his parents had put out a hit and, or family had put out a hit for like $50K.
Wow.
And then the Sigfredo gets drunk on the toilet wine and starts telling this inmate that Donna hired him for $50K. Like it was like
wow.
By the way, Bob, and what he says is they tried twice. The first time they hired someone for $50K, and whoever it was just took the money and didn't do it. And then they hired these, Sigfredo and Rivera, and they actually did the hit. So it was very interesting.
That's so. I mean, George is definitely going to want to get that in somehow.
I know, but you can't. Right? Can you get that? Can you get that in? Right?
Like it.
By the way, people are telling me
that's the number one thing that I'm trying to figure out. If I'm Georgia, how the hell to get that in? If there's a way, if there's a hearsay exception where we could work around it. I mean, damn.
People are telling me that those. So there were 3 inmates. Two are still alive. One is dead. But the people have told me, I haven't looked yet, but they are on the witness list. So it's going to be real interesting.
I mean, dude. I mean, an act can be kind of nonverbal hearsay. Like, I'm trying to think, like the act of giving somebody $50,000. Did he said that Donna gave him the $50,000?
No, he said Donna. First of all, he said that Donna and Katie were in contact, which Katie has denied, which I think is true. But he said that Donna told them that they tried hiring a different hitman for $50K. They gave him $50K, and these people just jetted on him. And didn't do it. So then they paid $100K to Sigfredo, Lewis, and Katie to finally do what they did to Dan. So he basically is saying this was their second time trying to have Dan killed, and the first people just took the money and left.
Damn. Yeah, I mean the problem with Donna and Harvey is if they were just socking cash away in their safe. You know what I mean? It's like to avoid the paper trail, like the paper trail, because typically it's pretty hard to hide the fact that you've paid somebody 150 grand.
Well,
You
they
know,
have
short
testimony
of-
from the first trials where they say they absolutely did do that. They had big stacks of cash in their safe, so that's
Yeah,
that's already come out.
But like, I mean, like who testified to that? Do you remember?
They got it from like texts and emails between the Adelsons. Obviously, not having to do with the murder, but just talking about moving money around, how it affects taxes, how it's better that they keep some stuff in their safe. So they had that in one of the. I forget if it was the first or second.
All right. I mean, that's powerful evidence. That is very powerful evidence. All right, y'all. So it was a short morning / afternoon live. Jay, I love you. Thank you for coming in, dude. For a minute. We love you guys. Thank you, mods, for hanging. Beautiful humans, thank you so much for hanging with us. We appreciate it more than you'll ever know. Thank you so much for the gifting. We always love to see that. It is the gift that keeps on giving. It grows the fam. Family hugs all over the place. So that was very thoughtful. Thank you guys so much. And I've portaled y'all to the afternoon, 3:30 my time, 4:30 Eastern, and obviously 1:30 if you were on the left coast.
And
so
if you're on,
you'll come back and hang with us.
Yeah, if you're overseas, it's a little less than 2 hours. Just like it's about 2 hours from now, a little less than 2 hours.
Yes.
If you're overseas.
Exactly. All right, you guys are the best chat in the land. We love you. We love you. We love you. Hasta la vista. Ciao.
See ya.
See ya.